podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Cardiff Central. I'm back after my family break. This is Harley, and as always, I'm joined by Carwyn. How are you doing this week?
Yeah, not bad, thanks, mate. It's nice to have you back. To make less jives about the start on a Cardiff pod this week. I think there's no reason to do it. Well, maybe we'll get a couple in. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head that I haven't pre-prepared. I don't know. It's nice to have you brave as a lion back on. That's just too corny, isn't it?
I was more thinking along the lines of I can't wait to see how Scarlett's bounce back against the Pig and Pallet. So as I said, I mean, we've got Scarlett's Fever for the support for those who need some supports group, and I believe they've put the Samaritans line on their description for that. This is going to be our last episode this side of the new year. So we're going to just briefly go over the Bath game, bit of news, and then we're going to preview both the festive derbies. And just a reminder that there are some festive quizzes to keep you entertained with all things rap. I believe you had some help. You did some bits of the Cardiff. Any big questions that you really happy to? You think you're going to stump some people?
I don't know, really. There's a lot of questions in there that there's some maybe I learned a couple of things about as well. So hopefully, for my own sanity, hopefully some other people get stumped on them. Yeah, nice. Lee's fair play put in a heck of a lot of work on them, as did the other boys on there. So it's good to see that coming through, and hopefully people enjoy them over the Christmas period while we're taking I'm going to say I'm taking a well-deserved break. Obviously, you had your week off last week, which I've been told to wind you up about. So, but yeah, nice to have, as I said, nice to have you back.
As I explained it was either before the recording or on last night's wrap. It wasn't that relaxing because I spent the Monday night driving. I left Devon at 2:30, and we didn't check into the hotel till just after 8 because of not just traffic, but also having to go sit the extended family run of between me and my partner's Welsh-based family. So it was not a break that week. So should we get started with basically what is the big bit of Cardiff news? So after the Bath game, Cardiff released a statement. Presumably, I think it was meant to be a sort of feel-good thing, hoping for a Bath win. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. But the mysterious new investors have been announced. So, do you want to give your thoughts on about that?
Yeah, well, it's I think it's the worst kept secret in rugby, and there's a few to compete with that. Everyone knew there were investors coming in, probably didn't know exactly the nature of it, but it's good to have faces and names to the people that are going to be investing in the club and hopefully providing and safeguarding the future of the club. We all know rugby's at a bit of a crossroads at the moment, and we've seen the issues that have been in English rugby, the issues in Welsh rugby as well. Obviously, that's partly arise with the salary cap. So it's going to be difficult, but at least now there are people that want to invest in the club and have shown that they've got passion for the club. Maybe you want to expand on that a bit more. You were talking to me about that pod.
It's basically the group. It's the Halford Investment Group. So they do just one of those typical investment groups. Seem to have their fingers in many pies, including cryptocurrency. But it's being fronted by Phil Kemp and Neil Griffith. So Phil's a proud Welshman. He's been around the club for the last decade or so. He's been running businesses here and there, so he seems to have a reasonable, keen business mind. Neil Griffiths is also a Welshman, so he's again global interest investment bucket. The plan is to try and pump money in. The thing that's that I sort of quite encouraging is they they didn't come in and say, oh, we're going to be doing XY grandiose signing, and all the rumors about signing Antoine Dupont and who is it? Who's the one? Ed Jenks, the legendary Ed Jenks is trying to bait us on the other earlier. Cooper, Quay Cooper. Their priorities have been listed as new long-term lease for Cap, stabilize the development pathway to make sure we've got top-class training facilities for both the seniors, the rags, and the development. At least all that noise sounds pretty good to me. It sounds like they're not just going to try and make a Cardiff Galacticos, or at least not in the short term.
Yeah, and realistically, those are the areas that they have to invest, because I don't know how things will work with the salary cap and new investors. I'm not 100% sure, but it has to be behind the scenes, and I think it's been a badly kept secret in Welsh rugby that the pathways aren't working as well as they should recently, and part of that is talent retention. We've seen, I know there's been a lot of going on about Faye Both, so that's a slightly different scenario, but players like Lewis Summit, for instance, going and playing at Gloucester Heartbeat, players like Callum Sheedy playing at Millfield and then on to Bristol. So how do we keep those players and persuade those players to stay in Wales during their formative, for want of a better word, years between those 18 to 21, and then developing into the talented players we see? There are those players, the Mackenzie Martins, the Della Ruas, that stay in Wales and not just stay in Wales, but it's about trying to keep as many of them as possible and get them to form talented back rows of the future. Really, that seems to be the model to follow in the footsteps.
Yeah, absolutely. I said it's quite encouraging. And they also say, in their the statement released to the club, they're saying that they also see the Rags as a an actual competitive team, as well as just as keeping it as a development tool. So it's clear they're looking at trying to make the club successful, both in terms of the production line, but also as a as a rugby club, as rugby clubs in their own right. So I said all the right noses. Gareth Thomas is now honorary president, or at least that will be their first action when all this gets approved at the AGM. But yeah, interestingly, from all the noise I've heard, the Cardiff Athletic Club seem to be really keen on these guys. They seem apparently they're a lot more amenable than previous regimes to give that long-standing lease that's needed to redevelop the Arms Park, which anyone who goes there, even semi-regularly, realizes it's very much overdue. And the idea, and with all the ideas, turn it into like a business conference center as well, so that you're bringing in income not on match days, which, given we've lost a fair few home games over the years, actually it's probably one of the better ways to do it, other than putting on more games.
Yeah, it's something that needs to be developed. That was probably the plan when Cardiff came back from the Cardiff City Stadium, which didn't work for various reasons, and came back to the Arms Park. You then get the 4G pitch or the 3G pitch, whatever it is by now, and then you develop a stadium that needs to have. It needs to be developed in a way that keeps its character, though. That's the one thing that I would say, and that's the difficulty with the Arms Park, because it's conjoined and with the Principality now, and it's right in the heart of the city. How do you develop while not losing what's there? And that's going to be a difficult one. But yeah, there's lots of things that need improvement. We could spend the whole pod listing them, but let's look at the positives, which are that there's going to be security there following the ownership of Peter Thomas, who looked after the club for several years and looked after the club post his death as well. So hopefully they can continue that legacy long into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty much all we can say. I think same with a lot of these things, we've got to wait. We've got to wait a little bit of time to see if it does work out. But all the noises at the moment are promising. If not, maybe a slight worry about where this money exactly is coming from. But for now, I'm just kind of glad knowing that we're still going to have a club to support for the next few years. Speaking of Cardiff, let's dive into the game. So we lost quite narrowly to Bath, 32-39.
Yeah.
What did you think of the game? Were you watching were you in the Arms Park? Were you in a truck? Were you watching on TV?
I was none of the above for the majority of the game, which drove me insane. I had a friend's Christmas do, basically, a gathering every year. So they decided to do it that evening. And we were planning to go to a pub for the evening, but then other people had different plans, which frustrated me because I wanted to go to the stadium and had planned going to the stadium. And then realised I couldn't do it for this family gathering. But I caught the last 10 minutes and then rewatched it, obviously, pre the pod. Long and short, the positives, what a game. Brilliant game. I think Lee and I spoke about that pre-game and said, to two really attacking sides, really exciting sides. You look at that Bath back line, it's brilliant. The Cardiff back line is brilliant. You've got the excitement of some young players coming through for both sides that are really going to pull up trees and really going to push the established, international hierarchy in the near future, I think. And in the end, there were a few things that cost Cardiff, and I'm sure we'll talk about the negatives afterwards, but as an overall spectacle, what a positive for the city, for the club, for the Champions Cup even. Cardiff been labelled whipping boys of the Champions Cup, and it's not going to be a good season, blah 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 blah. But more than showed why they're in the Champions Cup. More than showed why they've qualified. More than showed why they deserve to be there. The individual players showed why they deserve to be there. Some of those players outperformed their opponents, let alone showed why they were justifiably in the squad. So, I thought it was a brilliant spectacle. Cardiff more than held their own. Unfortunately, weren't able to get over the line, which we've spoken about as being a frustration in previous weeks. So we will speak about it because it is something that needs to be improved come the new year, or pre-new year actually. But overall brilliant and lovely to see. We've spoken about it just previously, but lovely to see Josh Adams back looking at his best. Just unfortunately, he gets injured in the act of scoring the second try.
Yeah, let's hope it's just a niggle or something, and nothing that'll keep him out too long term. But yeah, it's great. I mean, that's only the thing that frustrates me is the season as a whole is that's only our second try. Bear in mind we're supposed to be this attacking team, and that's only our second try bonus point. But we've got it, so I'm quite happy with that. And you look at it, and it's all the backs, which is quite nice. Whereas when you look at Bath's tries, the first two are by their legit big boys, Cocknessing and Lawrence, but then the rest are all back. Is one from Dunn from the back for driving more. Then you have Barbary and Kutsia just smashing over.
Yeah.
I know Josh Gardner of the Blood Mold podcast pointed out maybe, they could have actually been held up in those situations. I disagree. They're very big boys. They're very good at actually smashing through and getting the ball down. It's not necessarily as easy as you think it is to hold someone up over the line.
Yeah. The Barbary's tries a bit too soft for me, but yeah.
The Barbary one I think is too soft, but I mean I'd say with like the Kutsia ones, it was just too much power.
Yeah, it was a culmination of power.
I thought overall did quite well. I thought De Beer, I'd say had the match of, if not slightly better than Finn Russell, certainly from the kicking tee, which has probably been one of De Beer's bigger work-ons.
Well, it was De Beer's best performance at 10 for Cardiff so far.
I think so. Yeah, I think
he was superb.
It's like things are starting to click again. It's almost like I feel like we're starting to settle. So I mean we'll go into things like the derbies and stuff. I'm actually kind of hoping we keep this 9, 10, 12, probably the 13. You could probably switch up a little bit, depending on how Lilo's feeling. But they're starting to click together, and it's quite nice seeing them. But after a break and Thomas Williams at the bottom of the ruck, De Beer is the one who steps in and puts Adam away for the try. They're starting to interlink, and I think one of the big worries was when we lost Jared was that partnership with Thomas. So
yeah, if you're jockey, you're fully justified. I've been quite critical in the opening couple of weeks about De Beer, and I thought he was superb on Saturday. I thought he's absolutely superb. And if you're jockey for backing De Beer week in, week out, saying, okay, maybe not. I don't want to put myself in Jockey's mind. I can't speak for him, but perhaps he was thinking, maybe we're going to get a bit of iffy performances to begin with. Some hot. He's going to blow hot and cold as he's learning the players around him, learning the higher level of the URC and Champions Cup. But to be fair, the last 2 weeks while he's been playing in the Champions Cup, I think he's looked really good. When he's actually jumped up an extra level again. So hopefully he can continue this form when he resumes the URC league, because I think he's been brilliant in the last 2 weeks. He's been very good all season. Can't really fault him in the game against Bath. I thought, a couple of brilliant breaks. It'd be nice to have a bit more support around him. I think it's the one thing, if De Beer is going to make these breaks, good to get the support. We saw that with Ben Thomas's try when Thomas made that break, that he had options going right, left. You had Lilo and then Ben Thomas off on the tertiary line. So it'd be nice to get, the more he makes these breaks, the more people are going to expect the breaks, and then people are going to be waiting for it, and possibly having, with all due respect to Harry Millard, who's been brilliant on the wing, but having natural wingers and natural finishers like Josh Adams and how Hamer Webb started on those inside lines will help as well. One thing I wanted to comment about Ben Thomas, I'll just try. Please, Ben, never celebrate before the try ever again, because I was having kittens. The second I saw the arms go out, I was like, "Oh no, don't do it! Please don't."
Yeah, I've seen too many of those ones where they drop the ball afterwards. It's I mean, one thing for our backline, apart from probably Thomas and Josh boosting the main salary up again, I imagine that entire backline isn't on much more than what Finn Russell's reportedly on. And I'd say, that's too bad. When you're going up against teams where one player's got 20%, earning 20% of the whole squad budget, I'd say you're doing. I'd say you only be 7 points down. And to put that Toulouse game into perspective, did you see what they did to Quins?
I wouldn't
say Quins were that far off full strength. They're probably missing one or two, and I know Dino Lamb went down early, but
yeah. Well, I did. People like to make controversies of that game, with Tomo Ramos's little spat with Marcus Smith. Maybe he should have been carded, in fairness, but yeah, it was. The
game was gone by then anyway. I mean, that's not going to win it for Quins.
It showed a lot, and this bad side aren't bad side at all. So it'd be interesting. I can't remember if they do face Toulouse actually in this pool stages, but
they should. They should do, yeah.
Yeah, I want to see.
The only one in the pool, the only team in the pool you don't play is the other one from your competition, so they won't play Quins.
Of course, yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how Bath go in that game, and then I fancy them to go further in the competition and see how they go there. So yeah, it was. There were so many positives to take from the game, and a couple of players. Teddy Williams again, I thought was superb. I thought he was absolutely superb. His little tip-on pass to De La Rua, who again, first 20 minutes especially, was brilliant. I really liked that Mackenzie Martin, come 60, 70 minutes, was still offering himself. That was something we said last week. We said, I said last week, I should say, let me own it, that I wanted to see him. He's shown that he can make these big busts, but he needs to make them more regularly and more consistently throughout the game. And he was still doing it late on into the game. He's still putting his hand up to take the ball on, which is brilliant to see from a young 8. He's going to make mistakes, but that's what I want to see. I want to see him prepared to make those mistakes. Belcher, brilliant. He's absolutely superb.
The lineup was brilliant for the vast majority of that game. And if did I imagine it, or did we steal some?
Yeah,
I'm sure, because I sort of did I sort of watched it after coming back from a rugby Christmas do, watched it live. Sort of some of the things like De La Rua's weird pass to no one. I had to watch it back then the next day, and I was basically just skipping between sets, basically just ball in play. But yeah, our line-out worked really well, and the scrum went pretty well until the replacement props came on. I don't know if that's necessarily Teddy Williams coming off and us losing a bit of grunt in the pack, because Turnbull's not a small man by any means, but he's not as big and powerful a bloke as Teddy Williams, because Turnbull's a utility back five player. He's not out and outside lock, which is what I think Teddy Williams is for me is becoming more of. So and the players that they were bringing off the bench are just like scary.
Yeah, look, I think that's if we're going to talk about I've talked about the positives without but the negatives probably there's two main ones which I think were exits. They were
I'll restart an exit. It was seriously even the Scarlets would have thought that was bad.
After that cheap joke, it's just cheap points. It was cheap entries, and it was so easy. And it was, I was a bit frustrated with one last week against Toulouse, and then this week, there were too many drop balls or not secured balls, or just a bit aimless. It should have been a lot. It just needs to be simplified and clarified and made concrete because you sort that out. Bath don't get the entries and don't get the territory, and then you're taking away one of their threats, which is their forward pack. They still do have brilliant backs. I'm not saying the game result would have been different, but it would have made things a lot easier for the Cardiff defence. And then the other one has to be bench because Bath came down with a 6-2 split. Coetzee scores 2 tries off the bench, coming on very early. I was surprised with some of the Cardiff subs as early as they were. Azarati, I thought was early, but the way he was going.
Yeah, I think
Teddy, I was surprised by that they brought Teddy off. I must say, that was
unless
the
they're
one.
trying to. That to me just seems almost like load management or something. That they really want to keep him for those 2 derbies, big shifts. But he's a young lad. He can cope with it, can't he?
I don't, the derbies are important. Don't get me wrong, the derbies are important, but I don't see that they're necessarily more important than a game against Bath that's in the balance at home in the Champions Cup.
Yeah,
I personally wouldn't have taken Teddy off at that time. I wouldn't have taken Thornton off at that time either, and but I can easily flip that and say I can see where Jockey's probably coming with it, which is where he's gone. What happened against the Stormers with 20 minutes to go? I brought on Turnbull with experience, and it saw the game out.
Yeah.
And that's probably what he's thinking. And
but maybe it was the wrong player to bring off. Maybe you'd be better off bringing on De La Rua or Mackenzie Martin. Well, I mean,
he brought off.
Well, they did bring off De La Rua, but for Alan Lawrence. But the point is maybe actually bringing him in to bringing Turnbull into the back row. One, it will add some extra weight because he's a bit bigger than the average back rower, but he's smaller than most locks. So for me, I agree. I think we've all agreed. I think remember this is his first season as a head coach, so it's the first time he's having to make these calls. We do have to give him time to adjust, and he's been open from the start about how this season is going to be a bit painful. And actually, looking back on it, as annoying it is because we feel we could have won more, most Cardiff fans would have bitten your hand off for only losing one game by more than 7 points this season.
Yeah. And the flip side of it as well is that you've got to remember that realistically, as good as a player as Josh Turnbull is, Rhys Litterick, Alan Lawrence, they are all good players. Most sides now, Cardiff are competing against sides with bigger, stronger squads. So that is a fact. It's just going to be a factor of it. You look at the players, Coetzee, he came on for Cloutier, who had an absolute stinker, actually, Cloutier at 7 for Bath. He didn't have a great game at all. And he comes on after, I think, 45 minutes. And he also then makes a couple of daft penalties away, but at the end of the day has a huge impact on the game. And other players, Schumann coming on in the front row, who's coming on? Will Stewart coming on the tight end.
Yeah, you're bringing on an England international for someone who's about Springbok quality. Probably he'd probably be lower down on the pecking order, but if there's a huge injury crisis, he'd do a job. Bringing Ben Urbano on Schumann, Elliot Stoke. All right, I know he's a bit of a joke in some circles, but he's been there, he's done that. Quinn Rue is a very good player.
Yeah, it's very good.
Again, bringing him on, and again, you're bringing on a lot of mass.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm waiting for the 10-minute Wilco Lowe eulogy from you. Are you going to go on about him at all?
No, that was another game. Wilco Lowe. I mean, what can I say? I still love Wilco Lowe. I've had a soft spot for Wilco Lowe ever since I started watching the Premiership properly. What can I say? I like tight head props, despite being nowhere near warming it. So I had 15 minutes at open side flanker on the weekend. So that was a fun one for me. Probably been one of the slowest in the squad. I said the bench. Yeah, I said I don't think the subs necessarily worked. James on rap from the Osprey Theory, he pointed out that he didn't think the replacement props had the necessary impact. Again, I've said I think part of it is we did lose a bit of weight in the pack. But yeah, I mean, especially with how well Littrick has been playing.
Yeah, it was one of Littrick's quieter games, and we just didn't give Carey the ball really to do what he can do.
This is the problem I always have with it. Like Carey's so unique as a prop, you almost have to change how you attack to get the best out of him. Because most teams, their prop is more of a, he's more hitting rucks or he's more on the tip line. He's not necessarily the big Bosch guy, which is a shame. I do think this is probably the game where we've missed Tamani the most. But I feel like if you had Petty Tamani coming off the bench or starting at 8, as great as Big Mac has been, I feel like Tamani's extra weight and grunt would have just helped negate that.
Yeah. Last week we thought he was coming back, didn't we? When we were talking, Lee and I were talking about it, and we were talking about that, the excitement of having a Petty back.
I think he failed a late fitness thing. Like he was due to be named, and they basically went, "Oh, he's not quite ready." So maybe it was one of those, we don't want to risk you. So I think it was a head injury.
Yeah. Can I talk one other thing about game management as well? Just one small thing. In the second half, there were a couple of unnecessary offloads that just didn't go to hand. There's one from Grady, there's one from Tinas, and it's as well as those two did play, and I'm not trying to pick on them at all or say anything, but those were moments that just, especially when your scrum's is on the back foot or perceived to be on the back foot, you need to avoid scrums if you can. So just take the extra phase. There's no need to throw this miracle offload all the time. And that was one small thing in the second half. I did notice that there were too many attempted risky offloads off the floor, off the ground. Just cost us a little bit.
Especially when our ball retention at ruck time wasn't, it was pretty good.
And
sometimes it is just worth just recycling that phase and carrying on.
Yeah, as mentioned, Cloutey can be a brilliant pilfer of the ball. Anyone who watched him when he was at Munster, he was phenomenal. I'm pretty sure he came down to the Arms Park one year and dominated there at town. But yeah, he was deathly quiet. And that was brilliant. Back row performed superbly. Alex Mann. I thought De La Rue again was superb. Actually, first 20 minutes, I really did really impressed with him.
So especially with some of the injuries you've got in the back row, I think Alex Mann is going to be very hard to ignore. For what I don't want to, because getting a lot of stick about everyone. A lot of people saying Big Mackenzie Martin should parachute straight in starting 8. I disagree with that, but I do think Alex Mann probably is there. I think he's got that look. I say similar to Cam Winnett, but I feel like sometimes we promote players too soon. But I think Alex Mann is probably one of the few who I think should at least be in the squad. I don't think necessarily playing, but maybe as a, like, was it Ireland used to do, and England used to have like apprentice players.
Yeah. Well, Wales have done it in the past as well.
Yeah. What's it?
Wales,
they did it with Noran Owen, didn't they? And people.
Dewi Leake did it a good 5-6 years ago. He was in the squad as an apprentice player. It's interesting about that, the 6, because I asked in that question about who should be fit for Wales. If say Palatau's not fit 6 stations, Wainwright jumps over, who is then the 6? Because I asked him on the Welsh pod, because we've gone from a situation in Wales where World Cup Faletau got injured, Wayne Brown shifted over, and I went, oh God, who's going to play 6? There aren't, didn't perceive to have that many possibilities. Had Gatlin in the Six Nations bemoaning the lack of a big physical 6 to you've got Christ Shunzi, you've got Ryan Woodman at the Dragons. Pardon? Shunza.
Christ Shunza's still out with a broken foot. He might just about be ready for Six Nations, but yeah.
Yeah, Ryan Woodman, who I'm a big fan of, I got to say, he's going to be a quality player. Alex Mann at Cardiff, very similar. All three line-out jumpers, operators, but also physical. Team Plumtree can be that line-out option, been injured a lot, but also adds an athletic possibility as well. And then you've got someone like Rhys Davis, who's probably a more classic second row, but playing a lot of good rugby at 6 as well. So it's really good for Wales. It just really is. And then that's without talking about both of them that, I know both of us are huge fans of both of them, but at the moment, how do you drop Alex Mann? I think there was a stat on commentary and the on TNT that something like Alex Mann was the first player over 100 tackles in the URC this season. So, work rate and doing the hard graft that no one really wants to do and unseen work. That's Gatlin's MO. If you're doing that sort of thing, Gatlin's going to notice it. So yeah, fair play to the guy. He's pulling out the shifts.
It's how effective some of his tackles have been, though.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that's been like. It's getting harder and harder to get jackal turnovers, particularly in the Test game, because referees are because TV companies and fans are pushing for these faster games. People like Wayne Barnes have admitted that referees are starting to give the attacking side a lot more leeway. So you've got to be so clean and precise that it's really important to get that player down, the ball carrier down as quick as possible. And the way Man is getting people around the legs, there was one turnover for De La Rue, and it's all done because Alex Mann chops him, and he's just there on a plate for De La Rue to go through. And that's something that we've been missing. Like, it kind of worked at the start of this quarterfinal against Argentina because we had Jaco Piper, who's a lot more cowboy in his determination of breakdown. Like, basically, if he sees you go in first, that's it. It doesn't have to be legal. He doesn't necessarily give the attacking side as much of a chance to clear out as a lot of other referees. He's very much on that, breakdown, make the breakdown as much of a contest as possible end of the spectrum as opposed to continuity. And we lack that then because Jack Morgan and Tommy Reffell are fantastic poachers. And Jack Morgan is actually a fantastically physical tackler, but I don't think he chops and gets people down as low. And as much as I love Dan Lydiate in his prime, he's not in his prime. I don't think he's played for the Dragons more than once this season. Maybe a couple of times. I'd have to check the stats of that, but he's really struggling with injuries and personal issues at the moment. But I am quite impressed with Ryan Woodman, but again, I don't know if he's necessarily at that step. Whereas for me, Man looks like he's there.
I think Woodman is probably a year out from it at least. But you've got to mention him in the question because he is a really talented prospect. But yeah, Alex, I can't speak highly enough of him. The way he's taken to the URC like a duck to water. He's been phenomenal since he's come in. Fair play and long may it continue. And last week, speaking of players not looking out of place, Teddy and Alex, they looked like if you're back going home, you're probably thinking, you know what, I wouldn't mind putting a bid in for those two players because they do look like the real deal. I think Teddy Williams, that handoff on Miles, is it Harrison? Yeah. What a handoff! What a handoff! The handoff, then the out the back door, but also before that, the little tip on pass to De La Rue is beautiful to put De La Rue through a hole. And yeah, like you mentioned, I think De La Rue saw Andrew Ford in the crowd and tried to pass the ball straight to him because I don't know if anyone's seen Andrew Ford's post on Twitter, but it is him who's directly behind that pass. But does put his head in the hands. But yeah, it was But to close off the back chat, maybe what a game and a brilliant performance all in all, and just unfortunately didn't go the right way. But I don't think it was a performance that you can't say anyone let the side down, can you?
Yeah, I said I think it was really good. I think again we hit the bare minimum. We got 2 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, so moving on. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo coming through. Is that on your side or mine?
I can't hear anything. You're fine, so it must be my side. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so moving on. We've had a fair few listeners' questions. We're just going to focus on one this week, and maybe we'll put some out onto Twitter for things. So, do you want to talk us through the question this week, Aaron?
Yeah, well, it was from last week, to be fair, and it was from a good friend, everything Cardiff rugby and football. If you could sign one player from each of the other 3 regions, what player would you go for? Lots of different options here. Fafita from the Scarlets, Lake and Wainwright, that's from South Terrace. Johan Lloyd, Botha from the Ospreys, and Elliot D. That's another one. I think Liam himself came up with, I'm pretty sure he said no to Derry Lake, which not many people do say no to Derry Lake. I'm trying to find his answer himself. Where is it now? I can't remember what his options were now, and I feel bad about that. Yes, but anyway, I've listed a couple of names here. I would say, and I'm tempted to change my option because of how good Belcher was on the weekend, but I have said Elliot D because I am a big fan of D, and I think his line out is very good and his throwing is very good. And I'd partner him with James Fender, and I'd bring him in from the Ospreys because I've been so impressed with James Fender. It's something Yeston and I. Yeah, it's a bit of a left field and quite bold call, but that kid's talented. He's so talented. And if anyone's listened to myself and Yeston talk on the Welsh pod about it, they are. He is going to be, if he continues the way he is, he's going to be special because he's such a good line-out operator. He's brilliant at the moment, and yeah, I long may that continue. And then my final one was again, I don't think Harley's going to be surprised by this, but Joe Roberts, big fan, and as mentioned before, I think that 13 future-proofing that 13 channel, whether seeing what you do with Mason Grady, obviously, but Joe Roberts is one hell of a talented individual, so I'd definitely take him at Cardiff.
I mean, you stole my Scarlets one. I'd take Joe Roberts. As much as I love Mason Grady, I'm quite happy to have him on the wing and move in later in games or whatever. Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. Ospreys, it's a bit of a weird one. I'd quite like to have a Reece Henry type player, so someone who can cover both sides of the scrum when you've got injuries or shortage. And he seems like a good laugh. Like I reckon he'd be brilliant at post match going into like the old Jack Matthews bar and places like that. Just having to sing song with supporters. Dragons wise, I feel like someone like Wainwright would be an obvious, a bit of an obvious shout. Rio Dyer again, but I think we've got such fantastic back 3 players. It's quite hard because would it be too much of a joke to say Matthew Screechback?
No.
I quite like, even though we've got some very good 9s, I wouldn't mind having Dane Blacker come back to cap because I think he's pretty good, and the more depth we can have, with Thomas going away, and we don't know what his future is if we're, with the budgets going down again, and he's going to be a play, an exciting player like that. There are going to be clubs who want him.
Yeah. What's interesting is neither of us have said it by half. And, a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have. So I think that shows the improvement of Tina. Okay, 7, hand on heart, I probably would be very tempted to take Jack Morgan. But, the strength of the back row, I've sort of said, well, the back row is good enough as it is. But, the fly half thing is an interesting one, I think, because a number of people did say Johan Lloyd or possibly even a Will Reed, the future that people are seeing for him.
See, for me, the only 10, and I feel like it's The only 10 I can I'd think about going for is probably Sam Casella. I think the potential we've got on our other 10s, I think, are probably on a par with the other two. Yeah, I mean, it might be a bit cocky. I mean, considering we've only really we've managed to beat Dragons once and lost to Scarlets twice. With Joe and Lloyd somehow making it work by playing like a 12. But I generally I think Tina Beard does the job. I think Robson's got potential. I think Sam Cassell is probably the only better 10. I don't know. I think Jack Walsh has been playing quite well. But I don't know if he necessarily works.
He is one who's been listed, Jack Walsh, because he has been brilliant so far this season. On whether he works or not, I don't know. I think he could be. I think he could be good. He likes to run the ball, but yeah, I don't see a reason to drop Tunis at the moment the way he's playing. I think he's playing really well. And yeah, maybe that sounds a little bit harsh considering the last few weeks and what I've cited him in the past, but I think he's fully deserved his place and is performing really, really well. So yeah, fair play to him. Another name that came up was Aneurin Owen at the Dragons, which is an interesting one. I can see that. I think he'd fit in quite well, but who do you pick him ahead of? Do you pick him at 13, which he doesn't tend to play, or do you pick him at 12 ahead of Ben Thomas, which would be a bit of a surprise, perhaps?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. For me, it would be if you were picking him, he'd almost be as the backup. Which, to be fair, squad depth is important, and actually having this player of that quality as your backup is pretty exciting. And then is that when we're looking to get? I said, I think for me, if we were going to strengthen the centres, which we probably need to do, I'd say Joe Roberts at 13 is probably the better way to go. Because as much as I love Halaholo, I don't think when he's been playing at 12, he's looked all right, but when he's been looking at 13, I think he's been caught out a bit. I think a large part of that is he's had a lot of really hard injuries, and maybe he's not able to use his pace and his stepping as much as he used to. I feel like Lilo's. Going back to the Bath game, I thought Ray Lilo was overall better than Ollie Lawrence. Lawrence may have gotten the score sheet, but Ray Lilo made two of those tries, and I think defensively was a lot better.
Yeah, I do agree. I'm not a big fan of Halaholo at 13. I was just having a look through. It was everything Cardiff Rugby and Football who said Jack Walsh and Aneurin Owen and Bear Fafita. So yeah, but there's the theme was hooker and second row perhaps is a theme, but on the weekend who needed a hooker or a second row? So I don't think Cardiff needed it with the quality alliance as we mentioned before.
Yeah, I think when you think we haven't got Seb Davis or Tamani in there, and I think doing quite well. I think someone like James Fenn would be great. It's an interesting you've gone for one, sort of the up and comer as opposed to like the more established. You might be tempted to go for a Beard or a Rhys Davis.
I like Beard. I do like Beard. I know he gets a lot of stick. I just really like the look of Fender, the way he started. After he did have a horrendous 10 minutes against the Sharks up in Twickenham. For the first 10 minutes in that game, he was awful, but after that, for 70 minutes, he was phenomenal. So I like the look of him and hope he can continue the way he's going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I said we're going to break. I said this is going to be the last episode before Christmas, so we're going to throw both the derbies into a pot together. So Boxing Day, we're playing the Dragons in what I consider the worst game of rugby on the calendar, because I hate Cardiff versus Dragons. It's always a horrid game where we somehow win despite not deserving it, and I feel like we're going to lose the whole time. But on the positive, to be more positive, this is my one of my key work on notes I've picked up from feedback. We basically sold out cap. I was thinking maybe I was in with a cheeky. If it wasn't for the fact I've agreed to play a game of rugby on Boxing Day, I was tempted to go to just sneak up and down. But it's going to be but yeah, sold out. My usual spot in the southwest terrace is gone. The north terrace is sold out. I said it's got to be good. Second near sellout in 2 weeks, or just over 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's class. I'm actually getting. I'm not going to be there. Yeah, I don't think I can get away. I'm going to the other derby, primarily just because I'm down west with family who, as I mentioned before, are all Scarlets fans. So my partner's family are all Scarlets fans. So I'm getting the opportunity to, well, just wind them up by supporting, literally being a black sheep and supporting the Ospreys for the weekend again. But yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a diabolical game, probably, and I don't say that lightly. That game is always awful, but the two sides who I think have come out of Europe, I don't think either will be too disappointed. Yeah, obviously the Dragons got their win against Oyen at home, but then with the Po and nearly got the win there. But Cardiff are performing well. I think both games they've shown, certainly the first 20 minutes against Toulouse, and then the whole game against, or first maybe 70 minutes against Bath, showed how they can definitely compete, if not be up there at this level right at the top. So it's about continuing those performances, but getting the result at the end of the day. I suspect it'll be a bit like the first game between the two sides, where the performance will be diabolical, but the result may be a more positive one. I don't know. Do you see this being won or lost by more than 70 points? 70 points? 7 points, Harley?
I said I think for my rap prediction, I think I did predict very confidently Cardiff by 7, which, given the last 2 times I've predicted confidently of Cardiff win with both Scarlets games, I'll let people make what they will of that. Yeah, I especially considering Dragons keep banging on about their injury list and unavailability list. These are in theory we should be in a better place. I think we've got overall more like our sevens, probably the worst of our the worst position we're in terms of injuries and suspensions.
Yeah.
But as you point out, De La Rua had a really good game against Bath, and I'm quite looking forward to that. So Tamani in theory should be back. I mean, hoping the injury to Adams is just sort of more of a minor thing. But then
hopefully a dead leg. Nothing muscular.
Yeah.
Hopefully just
But
a dead
even
leg.
then, if you start Hamer Webb, I think he's done nothing wrong in the Cardiff shirt. I think he's looked really good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd be tempted to give him. I think he's probably earned to start outright anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, as I said, I'd like to keep Williams, De Beer, and Thomas, injuries aside.
Yes, I'm going to agree. Because although there's always a temptation to rest one of the halfbacks during these games, and that the tight turnaround Boxing Day and New Year's Day, it's not as tight as it used to be, but there's always a temptation to play a little bit of selection mixing it up and trying different players. Maybe an Ellis Bevan at 9 if that happens. I'm not disappointed at all. I really like him. I like how he's playing at the moment. But yeah, that's the only thing. The only change I'd be tempted to make are maybe more pack based, and I think you can play a carrier against the Dragons. I think you can. I don't think, although Fairbrother's scrummaging very well, I don't think it's an area that I'm too worried about. And then maybe you bring in a Turnbull to have a start because he hasn't yet had a start, or maybe you bring in a Tamani if fit, as we mentioned before. That'd be nice to see him back on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to see Tamani and maybe Turnbull to 6 and give Man a rest, because I think he's basically played almost every minute at 6.
Yeah,
or close to every minute. Just again, not as a drop, but just as you've played an awful lot. Let's you're young, you're a young lad. You've got plenty of time for that. Let's get through. Get through that. Be nice if I don't know what this situation is with Seb. Be nice to have him. See if he can get back. See if we can get because we've got Cardiff Dragons is a really weird one because it's two teams who are set up to play really wide, fun, expansive rugby, and it always turns into a dogfight.
Yeah.
And do you maybe just say, let's just call it let's just start off thinking it's going to be a dogfight. Have Tamani and Teddy in the second row together. But beef up the or maybe put Tamani to 8. Have Martin coming off the bench, for some explosiveness at the end. Sort of grind them down as much and then open up. But that won't happen. It'll be weird and open, expansive, and then the subs will come on, and then it will turn into a dogfight the way this game always goes. Yeah, I think I'd rather keep the halfbacks, but maybe actually change them. So actually use the bench halfbacks, just to give them a bit of time. So then when you've done that 6-day turnaround for New Year's Day, because saying that I don't think the Boxing Day to New Year's Day derby's too bad. I think the worst one is going to be for that next round of Europe, which will be I believe the Saturday. We're believe away to Racing. I can't remember which round the Quins and Racing games are. If I was more prepared, I'd check. But
I'll quickly have a look. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that is going to be quite a quick turnaround because the way the games are going at the moment, you've got the only reason I'd be tempted to. Sorry, actually, you're wrong. We'll after all this, you've got a 12-day turnaround after the 1st of Jan game. So
it's a week off. The week off before. Okay.
Yeah. So after all that,
is there a week off before and a week off after then? I remember seeing like a week off after Europe, but
yeah, there is.
Again, maybe I've got it.
Yeah. So there's more than a week off after Europe, but depending on results. But yeah, the situation at the moment is that obviously they got that week off after the New Year's Day game, so perhaps this is the one where you rotate a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 4, 5, 6, 8. That's the one where I think I'd quite like to see a bit more of a gnarly side. Actually, yeah, bring Tamani back at 8 maybe. Again, we don't need to repeat it, but nothing against Mackenzie, nothing against Man. Maybe bring Turnbull back for his experience and know-how of dealing with this Boxing Day turnaround, and then you keep with Teddy and. If you stick with Thornton or bring Sent back, I'm not bothered either way. I think both have been playing well so far this season. So yeah, that's it's a good side. I think that's an exciting side that will go out and get the result because yeah, like I say, it should be a Cardiff win. I think, and it should be a Cardiff win by 7 or more points. Knowing the way these games go, it'll probably be 4 or 5 points the other way, and maybe knowing our predictions.
It'll be a last minute try, and it'll be controversial for something or another.
Yeah, knowing our predictions, it'll be like 45-42 now. The way that these our predictions have gone this season, but yeah, I think Cardiff should win that one. Yeah, and get themselves over the line.
Yeah. And moving on to the second derby, Cardiff versus Ospreys. Ospreys home game at the Brewery Field on New Year's Day. I'll be honest, this is a game that always shits my pants because Ospreys are a team that. The way I describe it on Rap is the way Ospreys seem to always beat Cardiff is they pulverise them in the pack, and then it just doesn't. And then the backs just don't get an opportunity to do anything. And then they make the most of it, which is effectively, seemingly, how we've been trying to play the Scarlets the last two seasons, but only just about managing to beat them in the scrum, and that's it, really. Not making the most. So I'm curious. I mean, maybe that's the one where we need to go for the more beefy, bulky pack, and maybe giving these younger guys the run out and then change into something a bit heavier to try and combat that.
Maybe, yeah, I'm a bit nervous about it. I think the way the Ospreys, I was there for the Ospreys against Scarlets, they were so dominant at front. They just destroyed that Scarlets pack. And okay, yeah, Cardiff were were dominant against the Scarlets, but didn't take advantage of it. And you give that Ospreys side any line-out opportunity inside your own 22, you're in for a really long day, because that driving maul is working brilliantly, as shown by the game against Benetton. Okay, really poor performance out in Montpellier. They'd be really disappointed about
But
that.
that was a more rotated side as well, and they lost a few at kickoff as well.
Yeah, the losses at
So
kickoff
in
were
fairness
big.
to them,
Yeah, the losses at kickoff were big, but I'd also seen that rotated side perform really well out in Benetton and only lose by 5 points. So I would have expected them to perform better than they did, and maybe that's harsh, but the losses at kickoff were probably the biggest part of that. But seeing how many of those are fit, they have lost a couple of their big players. Whether Morgan Morris is back, whether they've lost Max Nagy, who was brilliant start of the season. A couple of other
Kieran
players
Williams.
Pardon? Kieran Williams.
If Kieran Williams isn't fit, they basically lose any real direction and attack. Not necessarily in terms of directing the attack, but he's just a focal point for them to make meters. Is that punch.
It changes their game entirely, because they then bring in Owen Watkin to 12, who phenomenal defender, Owen Watkin, but has one trick in attack as far as I'm concerned, and doesn't really offer the same punch that Kieran does. I think it's interesting how they go on Boxing Day against the Scarlets, because on paper that Ospreys side should win, considering the way that the Scarlets have been going recently. And I know we took the mick at the start, but it wasn't. It was pretty worrying how they lost to Black Lion at home, and maybe we all underestimated Black Lion, but still not the result that Scarlets would have been hoping for. And there's talks of upheaval at the Scarlets, so if they can get a win at home, and comfortable win, which is what I'd expect, then they're coming to face coming to the Brewery Field, or going to the Brewery Field, whichever way you see it. It's probably halfway.
It's in the middle at the Brewery Field.
Yeah. So I hope the Brewery Field is packed. That's one thing I will say, because I do particularly like the Brewery Field. I've got a bit of nostalgia for it, but hopefully it's a classic of a game, and I can't choose that one. I can't pick that one. My head favours the Ospreys. My heart obviously says Cardiff, but I do think Cardiff can win. That's and there have been previous seasons where I've seen going up against an Ospreys pack and thought, oh, can't compete with that pack. And this season, I do think Cardiff can compete with the pack. So that's a positive from previous season to think.
I think that's one thing that the Bulls and the Stormers games, give us. Actually, even to be fair against Bath, who I know they outmuscled us eventually, but there was enough parity for us to do something in the backs, and to try and get something that way and break. We at least had enough parity to win our own ball and get the ball away. So I think, it's a bit better. I can't remember I can check what I said on Rap. Rap, I said Ospreys by 12. Now I slept on it. I feel, and I haven't got James bigging them up. I feel like actually that might be a bit harsh, and maybe it's probably more like Ospreys by like 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'd have said Ospreys by 5. If I was a betting man, I'd put them 5 points advantage. But I really think that could go either way, and that's going to be a bounce of a ball game. I think it could be messy, could be wet, could be horrible. Brewery Field is known for not being the cleanest of pitches at times, so it could be that could be an interesting one, the way the ball bounces and everything. So I'm going to see the Ospreys are favourites for it, but Cardiff could well win.
I think that's going to be a game where we're going to have to use the likes of Alex Mann and Teddy Williams and Rory Thornton. They've got to be going up every line out again on Ospreys ball, because I think we'll struggle to contain them in the maul. We're going to have to disrupt the source. I think we basically have to stop them having and put pressure on Derby Lake. I think that's going to be the way. That's going to be. I mean, they're definitely going to be putting pressure on us in our own ball, because that's, basically, was it they got a try and a yellow card out of us at the equivalent fixture last season at Cap. Basically, they basically pressured, I think, Kirby Myhill into a not straight throw. Marmalades the scrum, kick to the corner, and then just endless balls. Remember the really dodgy one where Falato got yellow carded for pulling down the maul, even though he seemed to be nowhere near the maul.
Yes, but
But
I think
I
I
mean
do think
that's history. But the point is, that's my point is that if we give them an easy chance to scrum and maul, we're going to have a very bad time with it.
yeah. Yeah, we've got to compete at the lineup because Derby Lake is still learning his craft as a thrower. That's as simple as it is, and that's why he wasn't, well, along with injury, but why he hadn't been Wales's #1 yet. Really, is because he's still learning his craft as a thrower. So yeah, put pressure on him and see what you can get. But yeah, I don't expect either game to be a classic. Nothing, not a patch on the bath game, but two exciting games. Definitely both will be close battles, and I don't expect it to be won by more than 7 points either way. Well, maybe the Dragons at home. I think Cardiff could win that by 8 or more, but I'd still be surprised if that is the case because it's normally a bum fight, isn't it? Let's be honest about it. That's being polite.
Just say Jamie. So of Rap and the Dragon Roar, he's predicted Cardiff by 10.
Right,
but that is very much a Jamie prediction.
is it? Well, it's the same Jamie that predicted they were going to win comfortably out in Poe, wasn't it? I just wanted to get a little dig in because I seem to be the only one who didn't think they'd win. Everyone else thought I was being negative for that. But yeah, no,
I'll be honest. If they'd gone full whack, I think they've easily beaten Poe.
Yeah, perhaps.
But they didn't. So that's on them.
Yeah.
So this,
so just wanted to ask a quick one actually. That on the derbies, if you're thinking Wales selection around the corner, which is I think 16th of January is going to be selection day. Who are the battles that you're most excited to see for those sort of Wales squad places?
I think with Kai Evans being back, I think him versus Winnett's going to be quite an interesting one. Presuming it's him, presuming they're the people selected at 15.
Yeah.
Might end up being moved to 10. Will Reed has been name checked as potential for a 10. So how he goes up against Yohan Lloyd could be interesting. I think realistically, Yohan Lloyd's the only 10 in Wales. Obviously, De Beer and Jack Walsh aren't qualified yet.
Mm.
Whether or not they do get qualified is another story. So in terms of 10, so I think that's probably a bit of a moot one. I think all the props. I think there's going to be a lot of game. Hugh Griffin. He's asked, is Lloyd Fairbrother the best scrummaging tight head we've got at the moment? Wales qualified, and I think so. Actually, Fairbrother, how Fairbrother goes up against Domachowski and Carey versus how Azarati goes up. Probably the lesser chance. I think Azarati's biggest tests are going to be when he's up against Gareth Thomas and Nicky Smith.
Yeah.
But looking at how they're going, I think Tom. There's it's a bit up in the air with Tom Botha's eligibility. Is he eligible? Does he want? Does he actually? The one question no one ever asks is, does he actually want to play for Wales?
Yeah.
Same as Max Nagy. Whether or not he qualifies or not is irrelevant. If he's considers himself English and doesn't want to play for Wales, that your point's moot. Think there could be some interesting calls at centres. Looking at how Eddie James, seeing how Eddie James, Johnny Williams are going. When they're going to be going up against George North, Owen Watkin, who, is still going to have aspirations. And Watkin was a player Gatlin liked very much.
Yeah.
And then, again, seeing those up against the likes of Grady and Ben Thomas. Again, another player who Gatlin's name checked in press conferences. But as a 10. And he's not getting the game time at 10, which I think might be unless we see like a weird thing where Gatlin sort of almost asked Sheraton very nicely to put him in at 10 for a bit at some point. Seeing how Teddy Williams stacks up against
Ben Carter,
if he's fit. Ben Carter, so that'll be one for Boxing Day, and then likewise against Rhys Davis. I'd say Beard's probably safe as a second row selection. We've probably got David Jenkins, Will Rowlands, and Adam Beard, they're probably locked in. We're probably looking at maybe 2 more.
Yeah,
depending on how.
and I think that's Carter, Teddy, Reese. I'm going to throw James Fender in as a bit of a
Yeah, I think as a
field.
bolter, yeah, as maybe a potential bolter, I'd say they're in there, unless he decides to bring someone like Seb back into the fold as that utility.
Yeah,
But I'm not so sure personally.
no,
But I feel like
I just don't see it. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it for Seb, but I at the moment it looks unlikely, doesn't it?
yeah, but I'm saying that's the only other option I can see. But obviously, it depends whether Shunza is going to be fit for the Six Nations and playing. So I feel like he's in that position where I think if you're going to call an England-based player, they've got to be playing regularly and playing well, because you aren't going to have the time to get them up to speed with in Wales if they're not in. Hookers again, probably, looking at like Elliot, the likes of your Elliot G, your Bradley Roberts. Does Belcher come into it? Like, I don't think so. It's probably going to be, you're probably looking at like Derry Lake Ryan Elias is going to be an interesting one, and then when you've got D going up against Elias next time, it's they're looking at 3. Is Bradley Roberts? Can Bradley Roberts figure in Gatlin's plans? Because I think Gatlin likes a hooker who goes forward and is decent and very good in scrum, not just a line out operation, and have that little bit extra. I mean, you could probably pick battles all over the park, but I think mostly I'd say the fullbacks are probably going to be the Kai Evans can win at fullback. I think is probably going to be the biggest.
Yeah, I'll throw in the sixes because I mentioned it previously. Yeah. I'm really excited about that one. Woodman against Man, 2 former under-20 captains. If that ends up being the case,
if that does become a selection, that could be interesting. Again, like you pointed out, the potential of having Reece Davies is that extra, having that sort of more physical.
Yes.
I'm not sure it necessarily works, because I do think Ospreys do lose a lot not having an out-and-out back rower in at 6, but I think their 6 choices aren't. With if Will Griffiths or James Ratty isn't fit, then they're 6.
Yeah,
they're out 6 choices in a bit.
Losing Will Griffiths earlier in the season was a huge loss when it had a player. That was my one debate question. Well, also and the sevens team, which I think Lee put to me last week, and I did have a little write of it down, which was Cabango, Grady, Thomas Young, Owen Lane, Josh Adams, Thomas Williams, and Cam Winnett, which I paid good money to watch them play sevens, and that is really the bench.
You're missing a couple of forwards there, so I'd probably throw in. a Seb.
Yeah,
he's very quick and he's got incredibly good hands, so that would help you there. I reckon someone like Mackenzie Martin, he's got the potential to be decent there.
I've got Evan Lloyd as well. I fancy he'd be good at sevens.
He does look very quick, and he's a converted 8 as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
So that's some good things.
Teddy I'd fancy as well. I think Teddy can play anywhere, but that's maybe on the back of this last weekend.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking wider squad, because let's be honest, if you're going to throw a Welsh regional sevens team, it's usually the wider squad men. So I reckon someone like I reckon Arwell Robson probably be all right. I reckon he's got the speed. Jamie Hill and Ennis Bevan, I think, are both quite rapid as well when they get up to it. And our favourite player to throw in when you're not sure who else to throw in, Harry Millard, I think, as well. Very, very quick, very, very quick lad. One question we did have at wrap, so I'm not going to repeat myself here, but how do you think, just very briefly, how do you think this first half of the season's gone for Cardiff?
It defeats that sort of. Are we grading it, or what we're doing? Because it surpasses that must do better grade, because it's much better than that. It's the approaching. There's definitely the seed of brilliance there, and that's the most positive thing I think. Players that have come in and starred, we've gone on about all this pod, but I don't need to repeat them again. But there's the shoots of brilliance, there's the moments of brilliance, there's the big wins, and there's the frustrations that are almost, I think they could be good for the future. They're almost making sure, right, there's still work on, still not getting it over the line in these areas. So long term, there's no risk of Cardiff becoming complacent over this season. I think it's shown that you're saying that it's a Cardiff side that have the possibility to win a lot of games and can stay in games and compete, whether it be a fast-flowing game, whether it be a tight, compact game, and that is brilliant to see. It's just about getting a bit more experience in some of these players, getting a bit more minutes, getting a bit more knowledge of how to get over the line, and then it's one hell of a team. And that's really exciting to say, because start of the season didn't think Cardiff would be as competitive as they have been. Didn't think they'd have a win against the Stormers. Didn't think at the week of the game of the Stormers that they'd have a win against the Stormers. So, and did I see the performance of the first 20 minutes out of Toulouse? No, not a chance did I see that. So I was really impressed with that, and against Bath as well. So yeah, I'm gonna say, of the four regions, and possibly Ospreys being the one that you say have done what you'd expect mostly, as in they've shown on paper the side looks good and has performed well at times. I think Cardiff is probably can be the second happiest of all the regions, and I think for the future looks even stronger than some of the other regions. So that's the biggest positive I think I can say.
I'm gonna be really mean now and tell you Lee gave us 3 words.
Oh, sorry, you did say concise, didn't you?
It's fine. If you want, I will reiterate. So my 3 was better than expected. I think it's fair. It could be better, but I think given the state we were in at the start of the season, I feel like we've exceeded expectations. People are talking about Cardiff like not getting a win at all, and just languishing at the bottom. Whereas I feel like we're sort of respectably in the middle of the URC. Given our European pool, I think we did quite well. I think we've done quite well with the games, especially in context of other results.
If I can have 3 disassociated words, I'd probably say something like frustrating, shoots, and what was I going to say? I had it off the tip of my tongue and it's gone. Performances. The performances have been good.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm guessing for shoots you could take that as either shoots their own foot or green shoots emerging. So I'll let listeners and viewers. So just a reminder, we're in to like and subscribe. Like the main Rap account. That's Twitter account at Rap Podcast. That's now, well, last thing we heard is only 5 from 1,000 followers. Check out the YouTube channel where you can watch us in person. Plus, we've got all the festive quizzes to keep you on. Hopefully we get some more views than any of the other regions. I think Welsh Rugby Pod and the general URC are going to be the main quizzes people go for. But apparently we're doing much better than Ospreys, so let's beat the other 2 regions as well. And with all this extra rambling, it's just time left to say thank you for listening and to thank my co-host Carwyn.
Thank you very much.
And to say goodbye. Ta-ra.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.